My name's Charlie McGrath, founder of WideAwakeNews.com, host on the Rinse Radio Network, co-founder of Doomcast. I apologize for my voice. I have a bit of a cold. You got to ask the question. It's a horrible question to ask, and it's a horrible one to even think. But you have to ask, who benefits from this disaster inside of eastern Ukraine, this Malaysian airliner? At least, who benefits from the canned version of reality that's being presented to us by our establishment media and Washington, D.C.? Who benefits from absorbing this as the truth, this canned version of reality? I'll try to answer that later on in this video. But the fact of the matter is, within 24 hours of the downing of this airliner, we weren't asking the Ukrainian military's involvement anymore. It was 100% guaranteed to be pro-Russian separatists. Since that time, the question isn't expanded any larger than that, other than it's not now just pro-Russian separatists, it's pro-Russian separatists with potentially Russian soldiers on the ground operating the equipment, but at the very least, a terrorist training camp across the border in Russia where the separatists were sent to receive training on the Buk missile system. This is the narrative. This is the story we're supposed to believe. The evidence being presented to us, well, you have John Kerry coming out talking about a convoy of 150 military vehicles that have left Russia and went into eastern Ukraine. Now, he said there was personnel carriers in there, tanks in there, even artillery pieces in there, but he stopped short of saying Buk missile system. Why? Well, my guess is because they can't prove that there's a Buk missile system in that convoy, in that military equipment. But he says it like this is a shocking thing, military equipment coming into eastern Ukraine from Russia. That's been happening for over 6 months. The Russians are backing the pro-Russian separatists. They are backing this organization, this group that is fighting the Western installed puppet government in Kiev. This isn't a mystery, and it isn't a secret. But now, because they need to pin the blame immediately on the pro-Russian separatists and Russia, this convoy of equipment is going to be used, cited as evidence and as proof that they had a Buk missile launching system. There's a YouTube video out there, right? A YouTube video that shows a Buk missile launcher on the back of a semi, and depending if you're tuning into CNN or Fox or one of the other alphabet mainstream establishment media outlets, they'll tell you it's either rolling into Ukraine, evidence that they had one, or rolling out of Ukraine, evidence that they were trying to cover up the situation. And of course, there's the phone call that the Ukrainian military released shortly after the event. This phone call is allegedly between pro-Russian separatists and Russian authorities or other pro-Russian separatists talking about downing a civilian airliner. Now, even CNN covering this story over the weekend, even the experts that CNN brought on to validate this narrative that, it's all canned reality for us, even the experts they had on there, military analysts they had on there, said it was a little too convenient and a little too fast to have this recorded phone call between Russia and pro-Russian separatists or Russian separatists and other Russian separatists that takes the blame immediately for the downing of this aircraft. But this is the evidence that the president's going to cite, that the Secretary of State's going to cite, and that the West is going to cite in order to implement very, very harsh economic sanctions against Russia and potentially lethal military aid to the government in Kiev. Now, is there other evidence out there? Yeah, you bet there is, a lot of it. But it isn't going to be talked about in the establishment media because it doesn't fit inside that canned reality. For example, today, the Russian military ministry released radar recordings showing an Su-25, a Ukrainian Su-25 fighter jet, in the vicinity of the Malaysian airliner shortly before it was shot down. 3 to 5 kilometers away is how close it was. Now, that might seem like a long way, but it's absolutely nothing for a modern fighter jet. In fact, the Su-25 is armed with an R-60 missile system, and it could down another aircraft from over 12 kilometers away. You're not going to hear about this on CNN or any of the other establishment mainstream media outlets. You're also not going to hear about the fact that there's satellite images that show the Ukrainian military had air defense networks set up in that area. On the 15th of July, they had 7 radar stations set up. On the 16th of July, they increased that to 8 radar stations. On the 17th, the day of the downing, they had 9 operational radar systems in place in the region where it was shot down. Now, miraculously, the day after, they moved them all out of there, and now there's none. It increased after a week to having 1 or 2 on the ground. That evidence you're not going to hear about from John Kerry. You're also not going to hear Poroshenko, the puppet leader of Ukraine, coming on CNN today when he's talking about the world has to treat this like another 9/11, invoking terrorism, invoking fear, trying to gin up hostility against Russia on our airwaves. You're not going to hear him talk about how Ukraine has shot down civilian aircraft in the past. In fact, in October 4th, 2001, they shot down a Siberian Airlines airplane when it was on its way from Siberia to Tel Aviv. All 64 passengers and 12 crew members are dead, were killed in that downing of the airplane. It took the government in Kiev almost 2 full weeks to acknowledge the fact that they did it. They said, oh, we were shooting at a drone and it went off target and it downed this aircraft. This evidence, this history, this pattern, these are things you're not going to hear in our media because it doesn't fit in canned reality. So the question is, who benefits from this canned reality being accepted? The answer is simple. The West benefits. The same West, the same United States, who spent $5 billion of your taxpayer dollars, according to Dennis Kucinich, using USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy, quasi-government agencies, 60-plus programs, to have another color revolution inside of Ukraine that led to the coup d'etat of the government and the implementation of the Poroshenko puppet government. They benefit from the blame all being placed on Russia and the pro-Russian separatists. The International Monetary Fund, who said that one of the conditions of lending the next tranche of money is that all rebellions inside of eastern Ukraine must be put down. So there is a benefactor to buying this canned reality and selling it to the world. But the facts are this. The simple, disgusting truth is this. The United States, these things that are being done in our name have consequences. And if it wasn't for the toppling of the Ukrainian government, if it wasn't for the interference by the West to topple the government in Ukraine, there wouldn't be a civil war inside of Ukraine. There wouldn't be a pro-Russian separatist movement in eastern Ukraine. And there wouldn't have been a Malaysian airliner shot out of the air. And there wouldn't be 298 dead civilians, innocent civilians that we're talking about today. Stories are attached. Proof is attached. Please make up your own mind. Please spread this video around. Hey, it's time to wake up our friends and our family and our loved ones to this reality. We're being told lies over and over and over again, and with the exact same solution, which is draconian sanctions or outright military action. It's time to wake up and realize the truth and determine the truth for ourselves. Stories are attached. That's all I got.